Today, we're diving into what might just be one of the most ambitious economic projects on the entire planet, the African Continental Free Trade Area.
All right, let's just jump right in. No long intros, no fluff. Your time's valuable. And honestly, this topic is way too important to waste a single second.
Okay, so let's kick things off with a quick question for you. If you had to guess, what's the world's largest free trade area? Not by GDP or anything, but purely by the number of countries taking part. What do you think? Europe? Maybe somewhere in Asia or the Americas?
The answer is 54. And you know where it is? It's in Africa. We're talking about the African Continental Free Trade Area. You'll hear it called AfCFTA, and it involves an incredible 54 out of the 55 member states of the African Union.
All right, let's really get into this, because the scale we're talking about here is, well, it's genuinely historic. This isn't just some regional trade deal. This is a full-blown continental transformation in the making.
I mean, just look at these numbers. We're talking about a single market of roughly 1.3 billion people. That's huge. Their combined GDP is around $3.4 trillion. To put that in perspective, that's a population bigger than the European Union's. And get this, every single African Union country is on board except for one, Eritrea. The scale is just massive.
So you have to ask, right? Why go through all this trouble? Why create something so massive? Well, to get that, we need to look at the huge problem that AfCFTA was specifically designed to fix.
And this right here really tells the whole story. For the longest time, trade between African countries was just incredibly low, especially when you compare it to how much European countries trade with each other, or Asian countries trade amongst themselves. It was often easier, believe it or not, for an African country to trade with Europe than with the country right next door.
And a huge reason for that was these fragmented markets. Imagine a patchwork quilt of different regional trade deals, all with conflicting rules. It made moving goods across the continent a total nightmare, both logistically and financially. So the whole idea behind AfCFTA was to tear down all those walls and build one single, unified system for everyone.
Okay, so that's the why. But how does this thing actually work? What are the nuts and bolts of it all? Let's take a look.
Yeah, this definitely didn't just pop up overnight. The whole idea was first floated by the African Union way back in 2012. From there, it was years of really tough, complex negotiations. The agreement was finally signed in 2018, it officially kicked in 2019, and then actual trading under the new rules started in 2021. So it's been a very long, very deliberate journey.
So who's in charge? Well, it's basically structured in layers. You've got the AU Assembly at the very top. That's the heads of state, and they set the big picture vision. Then you have a Council of Ministers that handles the policy decisions. But the real day-to-day heavy lifting, that's done by the AfCFTA Secretariat, which is based in Accra, Ghana. They're the ones making sure everything actually happens.
And what's really amazing is how comprehensive this thing is. It's not just about, cutting taxes on goods, even though the main goal there is to get rid of 90% of them. No, this goes way beyond that. It covers services, investment, competition rules, intellectual property rights. It even has its own system for settling disputes. It's the whole shebang, a complete package for economic integration.
Now, when you have a project this massive, of course the rest of the world is going to pay attention. So let's look at some of the global players involved and what the experts think might happen next.
For starters, the European Union is a huge partner here. They're providing a lot of the technical know-how and financial backing to help build up the institutions that AfCFTA needs to actually work.
Japan's also playing a big role. They're really focused on the practical stuff, like making trade smoother and building up local expertise. A lot of this is done through their agency JICA, which actually has a formal partnership with the AfCFTA Secretariat.
And of course, you can't talk about this without mentioning China. Now, China isn't directly funding the AfCFTA system itself, but as the continent's biggest trade partner and a massive investor in things like ports and railways, China's actions indirectly shape the entire playground that AfCFTA is operating on.
Okay, so what about the future? Well, the projections are, frankly, staggering. Some of the big international organizations estimate that if this is fully implemented, trade between African countries could shoot up by over 80% by 2035. That's a huge leap.
And this is where it gets really important, beyond just the big economic numbers. This is the human side. The World Bank thinks that this boom in trade could lift 50 million people out of extreme poverty. 50 million people. That's what's really at stake here.
But here's the thing.
To really truly understand AfCFTA, you have to zoom out, because this isn't just a trade deal, it's actually just one piece of a much, much bigger puzzle.
And that bigger puzzle is something called Agenda 2063. Think of it as the African Union's 50-year master plan for transforming the entire continent into what they call the Africa we want, integrated, prosperous, and peaceful. And AfCFTA? It's the economic engine that's supposed to make that whole vision a reality.
Now, let's be real. The road ahead is not going to be easy. There are huge challenges. You've got to finalize super complex things like rules of origin, get rid of all the hidden barriers to trade, and somehow get 54 different countries to align their policies. It's a massive task. But the vision, the end goal, is crystal clear. One single, integrated market, stronger supply chains that stay within Africa, and a continent that speaks with one powerful, unified voice in global trade.
So that leaves us with the big, final question, doesn't it? This is without a doubt the biggest free trade experiment in modern history. Can 54 incredibly diverse economies really overcome all these massive challenges to build the world's next economic superpower? We'll just have to wait and see.